Well, guys, I have been neglecting this poor old car. And just a combination of a few things. I've been very, very busy with my job. We were trying to finish up an assignment in Georgia, which has taken me about 6 trips over there to participate in, so I had to do that. And the weather's been kind of weird lately, but the main thing that's going on is that I had some trouble with the fuel gauge in this car a month or so ago. Last time I had it out, the fuel gauge stopped working, went all the way to the bottom, and so I did some diagnosis on it and determined that it was in the fuel tank. It was either something may have happened to the connection there at the back, or the the wiring may have grounded, or the sender acted up, and that was disappointing because that's a brand new sender and a brand new gas tank that was in there. So I took all that out and figured out real quick that the sender went bad. So I contacted the people that I bought it from. It's a new sender, and they requested that I send it back to them to be tested. So I did, and then they called me back and told me that it was okay. It was a little bit low on the low side, which I didn't think that made any sense, but I didn't agree with that because I tested this thing. I know how to test a fuel sending unit, so I tested that thing several times, and the gauge and the wires and everything from the car is fine, but the sender was bad. It was grounded internally. So finally I asked the guy, I said, okay, I said, I'll take it back, but can you guarantee that when I get that sending unit back, it's going to be working properly? And at that point, they offered a new one. So that's your answer right there. So the old one was bad, so they covered it, sent me a new one. So I'm going to get that put in there, and we'll do that. And one other little thing too is I've had to go on mouse patrol. This time of the year is when they start trying to get in everywhere, including your garage, your cars, your house, any place they can get in to find food. So they've been in that car, they've been in that garage, they've been in that truck, and they've been in that house. So that is not acceptable. I mean, I can sort of live with them being in the shop out here because the shop's right by the field and all that. So that's that, but I don't have mice in my house. That's not going to happen. It's a nice house. Looks plain on the outside, but it's real nice on the inside. They really remodeled it very nicely. So I found out where the ingress and egress are in there, so I sealed that up, did some sealing around the foundation. So if it didn't keep them out, it's going to slow them down. But put out traps. Caught one last night in there. Caught one in there last night, a different kind of mouse, and then I almost caught one in there last night also. He ate all the peanut butter out of my trap, but didn't set the trap off, I think because the way I had the trap set in there against the seat. So we're going to try again, which I don't like killing mice. Cute little things, but they're destructive. And I've sort of, I believe that if you encourage something or you contribute to an issue, then you need to take the responsibility for it. And I am, because I feed these birds, and I've been keeping my bird seed in these Homer buckets, I guess they are, to get from the thing there. And so that was okay. That keeps them out of that. But I spill some around out here when I'm filling the feeders up. I'm a little bit lax about going out there to feed them, to fill them rather. So I know there's going to be all kinds of mice and critters and stuff out there. I don't care about that. That's out there. But I spilled seed in here, and then I stupidly was trying to store my big 40-pound bag of black oil sunflower seed in that truck. I thought, well, I can't get in there. It's sealed up. Shit. That's a laugh. There's a whole pile of it on the seat where they'd eaten it. They tore right into that bag. So anyway, I guess I'm going to go get one of those big galvanized trash cans that the lid will fit down on and go from there with that. So that didn't work out too well. So I contributed to that. So we're going to have to now proceed to dissuade them from coming back. So yeah, I can't put out glue traps because I just cannot bear to see a mouse alive on a glue trap. I just cannot do that. So the one I caught last night, he was a little sucker, one of those little gray ones, house mice, I guess, but he was alive. He caught his tail in there, and he was crammed up in there. It's one of those black ones that flips, those traps that flips. So he was alive, so he was wanting out. So I walked all the way down to the end of the road down there and turned him loose, and he's out. But the one that was in here was quite a bit larger, and it looked like maybe what they people call him a field mouse or something like that. But he was brown and white, and he was stuffed in there, and it got him in the midsection, so he was DOA. So anyway, like I said, I'm not going to worry about him too much in here, because I'm just going to try to be more diligent about keeping the seeds and stuff out of here. But I don't like them in the car, and if they go in that car, we got a real problem. So anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So let me get busy on this and get putting this tank and stuff back together and putting it in here, because I want to move this car out and wash it off and move that one in, because that's what we're working on now. And I need to be in here with access to all my stuff, and plus, like I said, I got to take the windows out of it, so it can't sit outside with the windows out of it, obviously. Okay then, so let's do it now. Okay, so as I was saying just a while ago, we're going to come in here and we're going to examine and we're going to test this fuel sending unit that I got sent to me. The folks, as I was saying, I bought the tank from for the Chrysler. I also bought a sending unit, and the distinction between this one and the one that came with that tank was that the one that was with the tank was actually in the tank. I physically mounted in it. It was not locked in, but it was mounted inside the tank, I guess, to avoid having to ship a separate package. It would be my assumption. And as it turned out, it had been damaged. It was bent, and it never did work right. So we already heard that. But I watched one of Old Car Alley's videos about replacing his sending unit in his gas tank in his Bel Air, and I realized that I had rushed through this job, impatient about it, and rushed through it and didn't check the sender, didn't check anything, just threw it all together and put it in. And I didn't take any of the steps that he did to make sure that it was going to read correctly, operate properly, and was in good shape. So this time we're doing it the right way. So we're going to take our time and check this thing out. This is the one. I've not opened this. All I've done is taped over my address. Like nobody knows where I live anyway. But this is, I made a mistake when I ordered the first one. I assumed incorrectly that my car used a 3/8 fuel line, which is a larger fuel line, and it does not. It uses a 5/16. But the 3/8 sender that I put in there worked. I mean, it'll work. You can make the lines fit. And I told the gentleman I talked to, when I left a note in the package with the old sender that I returned to him that was no good, that I had ordered the incorrect sender, and if they had one available to send me as a replacement, then that would be good, a 5/16. If they did not have one and only had 3/8, that's fine, I'd use it. I didn't want to give the impression that I was just trying to do all this to get the right size sending unit back. It was not the case. It did not work. So anyway, they did agree to send it back to me and send a new one. He claimed the old one worked. I claimed it didn't, because I know how to test these things, and that thing did not work, period. So either way, we're going to go ahead and we're going to unpackage this thing, and we're going to look at it as it comes out of the box, and we're going to look at it we're going to test it with the meter to make sure that this thing is doing what it's supposed to do. Give me 1 second here. Because I don't know, maybe some of you guys that do a lot of e-commerce can tell me more how this works, but I do not believe that these places actually stock these items. Maybe they do. They might. I don't know. I can't say with any knowledge whether they do or don't. I've seen the person's place on the Google Maps. It doesn't look like a place where they would warehouse stuff like this. And I know for sure they don't make it. So some third party makes this, and it gets sent from somewhere. So that's all I know about it. So it has their address on it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not important. But what matters is this thing works. So I've written down, I'll hold this up for you to peruse here. This is your ohm range on a Mopar fuel sending unit from about 1960 up through the late 70s, probably, maybe even later. So you can see it's just a scale, and you have high, medium, and low. High is full, medium is half a tank approximately, and low is empty. So that's how many ohms the meter should read through this sending unit as you move it through those various positions. So 10 to 70, 10 to 73, there's various interpretations of that, but generally speaking, 70 should be the low side of it approximately. So that's what we want to see. And there's been a lot of complaints about these replacement senders that they're not made the way the originals were, that they don't make the gauge read correctly. And I've had problems with these already. Not this one, well, I did, but the ones that are in those Plymouth, those A bodies out there, for whatever reason, the one that I put in that brown car didn't work right to start with, and then after about 2 or 3 months of using it continuously, just using the car, all of a sudden it started working right. So I don't know what went on with that, but may have been the gauge, don't know. But either way, enough talking about that. Let's get on with this. So we're going to open this thing. It's not been opened. It's still taped up here. It's not been taped up anywhere. The lady took it right out of her post office truck yesterday and brought it to the porch. So it's not damaged, it's not beat up, but I can tell. It looks good. So let's go ahead and cut it open. Because the previous one, the first one I got, the arm was bent on it. And so when I had put it in, it never did read correctly. It would always read too low. And so as it turned out, when I thought I had made footage of that, taking that out of the car out there, when I lost that, I evidently had deleted it by accident. So that may have had something to do with it, because the float in there was sitting sort of, you know, instead of sitting just totally level, it was sitting at about a 25-degree angle, thereabouts. So he said, the guy up there said that he was going to check this personally to make sure this was a good one. I mean, I guess he may have not damaged, but anyway. Alright, so this one seems to be packed fairly well. Okay. This one's bent just a little bit also. Look at that. If you see the you see where the this is your housing for the rheostat, I guess they call it, and see how this float is bent. It's not level. I hope you can see that. It's not. That one's, but the other one was worse than that. I don't know what's wrong with these things that they ship them that way or make them that way, because that's not right. Because ideally, see, this thing moves up and down like this, so it's supposed to be perpendicular, totally perpendicular to this part. So, you know, I can't see that he'd look at this and think that was fine. That's not. I have to fix that. If this thing is bad, that's the last one of these I'm going to get from them. I'm going to go somewhere else and get one. So now, let's go to the moment of truth. Let's do the ohm test on this to see if this is actually a usable sender. So, what you do to test these is very, very, very simple. You have a terminal here. This is what the line from the wire from your gauge attaches to, just pushes on. And this is simply a ground circuit. So the gauge in the car has 12 volts supplied to it to the cluster, and then the cluster has a voltage regulator that regulates it down to about 5 or 6 volts, which keeps the gauges from reacting to like fluctuations in the charging system, stuff like that. So and also lets them run at a lower voltage to kind of extend their life. So if you ever have a set of gauges in your car, an older car like that, that all of a sudden they all go over to the right, like all the way over or something like that, it's usually the little regulator in there. But these were working okay. He asked me to test the gauge in the car, which I did. I've done that multiple times. The gauge works fine, so there's no problem with that. Wire's good, all that. Check that thoroughly. But anyway, this is just a ground circuit, and what you're going to do is you're going to just test your continuity between this terminal and the metal part out here, because that's all this is doing. It's just like a rheostat to adjust your dash lights or something like that. It just permits more or less current flow. So anyway, this would be considered full. This kind of sits in there like this roughly, and then that bin on the end of it right there too, and then about halfway, and then this would be considered empty, and it's got stops on it. This thing dims itself down. I can't tell what you guys are seeing. So this has got stops on it. This is a lower stop, this is a high stop. And people say you adjust the arm to do that, to adjust the ohm reading on it if you need be. No, 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 you don't do that. Excuse me. You adjust these stops. That's all you adjust on these. You don't do that. So let's go ahead and get this hooked up. Be careful with this. You'll need to actually use this box, I think, as a pot here. So this thing is not the easiest thing to manipulate here. Yes. You want to make sure it's reading empty when it's. Let's do it this way. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna. I got my meter. I've got my alligator leads hooked up to this meter. So put that on there. Clip on the other one to here, and it is totally, the gauge at this point is totally empty. It should read empty. So if we're reading empty, we should be at around 73 ohms. So let's carefully maneuver the gauge around here if I can. Let's just see what we get here. I'll do more than one thing at a time. Forgive me here. All right. Okay, at empty I have 78.8 ohms, so it is a little bit high. So I'm going to move it through its range. Can you guys see that, the meter? Move you back a little bit here. Alright, let's see if I can maybe zoom you a little. If I drop you, I'll try not to here. I don't know that you can see that. Let me try this here a little bit differently. Oh, that's not working too good, is it? Let's see a little bit more. This is precision camera work. If you ever make your own videos, make sure that you do it just like this. This is not working. Okay, never mind. Okay, so anyway, take my word for it if you would. 78.7 ohms at total empty. And then I'm going to bring it up to about medium. Don't mind that. It's about 49 ohms at half a tank, which is too high, roughly. I guess it's about right. And then full is 8 ohms. So okay, so it is, the ohms are low at full and they're high at empty. So we're gonna have to take our tool. It is working though, that's good. It's got a scale on it, that's good. So, you know, I said that 49 is probably not right. I think it actually is. So I'm not gonna worry about that. I think this thing is working good, so that's good. So that's excellent. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tweak these. Let me get you set. I don't know what I've done with this camera here so far, but I'm gonna tweak you. Yeah, I'm gonna tweak you, that's for sure. I'm thinking ahead here. What the heck? I'm going to take my little set of needle nose pliers and I'm going to just tweak those stops so when it goes to full it is on 10 ohms. When it's on empty it's right at about 70. I'm going to go for about 73. It's on 78 now, so should be no problem to do that, and I'll let you know how it worked. So well, I guess really the thing is working, so that's good. The guys, they did their part up there that sent this, so it looks like they sent me a good one. I'm happy with it. I'll get this adjusted, you know, the final adjusting here, and then we're going to put it back in the car, put that tank back in the car, which that's a joy. That's a boy, that thing is a real joy to deal with. That's a big tank. Anyway, we'll get her done. I've got to take the truck, get the truck started up, and I'm going to pull the car out some with my tow rope. Just pull it out about halfway out of the garage, so I got room back there to deal with it. So, all right, well, nothing left to do but do it. See you out there. Okay, scratch that. Wait a minute. So, I thought, as I was getting ready to start messing with this, I thought it'd be a good idea to just go ahead and show you guys what I'm doing, because there's going to be people that have never done this before and want to see what I'm doing. So all I'm doing is, if you look here at this sending unit, this is the float arm right here, what they call a float arm. It's got the float at the end of it. It pivots right here. It's got a low stop here for empty. It's got a high stop for full. And so these are adjustable, more or less. You can move them just a little bit with something like this. And essentially what I'm going to do is, this thing is reading too many ohms on the bottom's end of it. It's reading about 78 ohms. It should read about 73. So to get it to read the proper reading, now let me think about this. It's empty. So let's think about this together. Now, what we're going to do, okay, we know that empty is empty. I mean, that, you know, we want to calibrate the sending unit to the gauge, but we also want to calibrate, make sure that the sending unit is interpreting the fuel level correctly. In other words, that we don't have our float off somewhere else. So this is going to be kind of a, it looks like it's going to be kind of a two-pronged approach. So the first thing, I think we're going to have to do part of this in here, and then we're going to have to do the other part out with it in the tank, because I think that's how Howard did it. I haven't watched his video, but not in a while, but I think that's what we're going to have to do. You have to do this two ways. You have to calibrate it. You can calibrate on the bench correctly, which means when it's at the bottom stop for a Mopar, it's reading 73 ohms. When it's at the top stop, it is reading, you know, right at about 10 ohms. Like I said, this one's off on both ends. It's working properly, but it's just a little bit off. So that's fine. I mean, that, you know, just happens. So what I will do is, I'm going to calibrate here, and then we will take it out to the gas tank and we'll mount it properly. I'm also going to readjust this arm right here so it's level. I don't know why it's like that, but both of them were. The other one, like I said, was much worse than that. But it's imperative that you do that, because you don't want, you know, if you have the float, you can't see me, I'm sorry, but if you have your float off one way or another, it's going to affect the reading. So then we're going to do that, then we'll take it out and do part two of this. The second step of this, we're going to take it out and put it in the tank like it's mounted in the tank, and make sure that it is not hitting the bottom of the tank when it's empty, that when it's empty, it's actually able to go down to the bottom of the stop and all that, and when it goes to full, it's able to hit the top stop and not hit the top of the tank or something crazy like that. So I didn't do any of that last time. I was just a lazy fool last time. I didn't do it. I should have done it. I knew better, but I guess I was frustrated because I was having problems with it already. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a pair of needle nose here, and I'm just going to gently bend this up just a little. Hardly at all. And I'm going to turn my meter back on and see. Still have 78, so I'm going to have to go more than that. I may have spoke too soon about this. You dirty old thing, you. So anyway, all right, so I'm looking at this scale more closely here as at the meter as I'm working with this thing, and I'm trying to do this without knocking the thing off again, but I didn't. But, so it's to get 73 ohms, it has to be that far off the bottom. It has that much movement in it. So okay, I'm going to live with that. So. Well, okay, here's the deal. That's obvious. It's obvious already I can't adjust this. So, because this thing has got, that arm has got, that rheostat in there has got so much space between where it starts to change its ohms reading. Like it moves up a good third of an inch at least, if not more, off the bottom before it even starts to drop down the ohm range. And then the top's the same way. It goes to 8 ohms, which is just slightly low, but it goes to 8 ohms, and then it has to move about a third of an inch, quarter of an inch, third of an inch, something like that. It has to move way off that stop up there before it even starts to change. I can't adjust that out. There's no way. I can't move those pegs that far. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to put it in, as long as it has a scale that is that close. I think at this point, with the quality that we have to deal with on these parts like this, I think I'm just going to go with it. That's all I can do with it, because that's weird, but whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and just I'm going to move this, see if I can carefully straighten this out, level this up here. So anyway, so Vans has done their part. I'm done with them. So if this one goes out, I'm not going to buy another one from them or get another one. I'm not going to fight it. But I just want to make sure and document that it was in usable condition when it got here. So, all right, guys, let's go put this all together. All right, guys, so we're outside and we're trying to put this thing together. And I don't know if you guys are subscribed to Old Car Alley. That's my internet friend Howard. Runs that channel, and Howard's a wealth of information and a lot of experience doing different things, and I've learned a lot from watching his channel. So if you're not subscribed to him, I suggest you do that. He's a real seems a real talented guy, and he's currently restoring a 66 Galaxy convertible. So anyway, we were talking through the comments a couple weeks ago, I guess it was, and Howard was talking about something being a fiasco, and I sort of halfway jokingly replied to his in the comments. I said, well, just about everything I touch turns into a fiasco. So it was sort of a joke, but it's true in some cases, and this is no exception. Something just as simple as taking a gas tank and putting a sending unit in it is turned into a fiasco. It's something that, just because of poor design, somebody didn't adequately blueprint this thing or lay it out or do the engineering drawings on it or whatever, they were drunk that day or had a hangover or sent it off to some Pacific Rim import production company to make these things. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. I'm just tired of even thinking about it. But here's the deal. All right, so I was telling you, when I took this apart, I found out that I had put the sending unit in, I clocked it, which means positioning it in the hole there the wrong way, and so the float was like at an angle. Well, when I went to put this one in, this is a replacement. You just saw me test this thing. All right, well, when I went to put this thing in, it became apparent that I had not made a mistake. I did, but I didn't. All right, if you look at this, this is where it goes. It's ready to go in. It's already been in, actually. All right, I made a mark on this thing. I took it out and held it up and made sure that when this mark was at 12 o'clock, made it with a Sharpie, inserted in the tank, and other words, matched that notch right there, which I don't know why it's there, but it is. So you see where this is going yet. Alright, well anyway, when that was oriented at straight up 12 o'clock, then the float on the sending unit would be level. So perpendicular to the bottom of the tank, just like it's supposed to be. I thought I wasn't going to do that twice. Well, turns out it was not my mistake. That wasn't, I was not the cause of putting this thing in wrong. When I went to put this one in, I can't really do this one-handed without possibly damaging this, so I'm not going to, but I'm just going to illustrate to you. You see that slot right there, the one that's in there, right there, and you see there's one, if I can move that seal over, there's one down there too. Alright, well, there's a notch on the sending unit, a little tab, and then there's, of course, another one down there. Okay, well that's great, except that when you put this thing in to get the tabs lined up, like about right here, I think it is, look how far over that thing is. Okay, that's that. I know it's not in all the way, I'm not putting it in all the way yet, but for the point of illustrating this story, we're going to just temporarily jam it in there carefully. Alright, well, if we look in there, let me get, it's hard to show you and show the light what's going on in there, but I'll try. Let me work with this a minute. Let's see. Let's look in there, see what we see. Okay, there it is. There's the float. That's how it would sit in there with those tabs in their slots. Does that look right to you? So, some boob, some goon that designed either this tank or this sending unit didn't know what the hell they were doing. That's the only reason there is this. They did it wrong. It's wrong. It's a fiasco. You agree, Howard? That's a fiasco. So it's not a real hard fix to do. It just aggravates me that I have to do this. So the money that I paid for this tank and this sending unit and aggravation that I've had to go through to get this sending unit replaced, which they didn't want to at first. You know, it's ridiculous. If you're going to ask, well, why didn't you use the original stuff? Well, the original stuff, the previous owner left it out in the weather, and it ruined it, and none of it was usable. The tank was junk, the sending unit was junk, it was all junk. Even the fuel line on the car was junk. It's all junk. So I've had to replace it. I made the fuel line myself, at least that works. So anyway, it's like I said, it's not a big deal to fix this. I just don't appreciate having to fix it. I'm going to take these tabs and I'm going to bend them down out of the way so I can just put this thing in where it's supposed to be. It's probably, they need to be there, I would say, to keep it, see, the theory is sound. If they had produced this the right way and designed it correctly, then that'd be fine, because it'd hold it in place and it would never move. It has a slight potential to move now the way it is, but there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just going to have to bend those tabs down, because I'm not going to sit there and try to saw slots in a different place in that tank, because that's going to get metal and all in the tank. I'm not even going there. Forget that. So we'll just do what we can with it. But that's, you know, I love fixing up old cars, guys, but I'm going to tell you, that's the most aggravating part of this, is to deal with stuff like this. You know, it's everything. Howard just put a fuel pump on his car, on his engine, and it's a Carter fuel pump, and he has the same idea I have. Well, if it had a Carter on it, let's put another Carter back on it to replace it. Should be fine. It's not. They've redesigned the stupid thing somewhere so that the bolts on the fuel pump don't go in very well. You have to finagle them in there. You know, it's just junk is all it is. It's because it, you know, it's corporate greed right now. The whole idea behind making any of this is, and then I'll get off this, but you got two things at play here. One thing's corporate greed that makes stuff like fuel pumps for cars like that, which are not uncommon. But they want to design them as cheaply as possible, as light as possible. You know, they want to make as total much money as possible, anytime, anywhere. And then stuff like this, they just started reproducing all this stuff. So somebody's flubbed up. Somebody sent this out to be made somewhere. And I just about can assure you it was not made here in this country. It may have been made in Mexico or someplace like that, which the stuff out of Mexico was better than China stuff. But regardless, it doesn't matter. Well, I'll fix it, but I don't appreciate it. I don't like having to fix stuff. If I pay $400, no. It was almost 450 bucks for all this, with the shipping and everything, for those two items, tank and the center. Almost 450 bucks to get this together. And I have to put up with crap like this. Fiasco. Oh, I wish I could say that was the end of the fiasco, but it's not, unfortunately. So, I went ahead and bent these tabs down, modified this sending unit as shown. I just bent those tabs out of the way because they're no use, or of no use. So, did that carefully, and then I went to put this thing back in, and I know the gasket's off of it. There's a reason for that. But I went to put this thing back in, and when I got it in, it would not sit when I had it oriented correctly with a float level and my mark there at 12 o'clock like I wanted. It would not go all the way in. It would not seat at the bottom. So I knew something down here was hitting the bottom of the tank, and it wouldn't have been the float because the float moves. This was something wasn't moving. It was this. So what happened was, this thing is so poorly engineered that when you have it put in the way it's supposed to be, that this filter sock hits, this tube is straight, and it hits the bottom of the tank and won't let it sit properly. So I had to take that filter sock off. It just slips off, and I don't know if it's very perceptible on the camera. I'm sorry I'm shaking it a little bit, but I had to put just a slight bend in that tube right there to get it to clear. And again, that is ridiculous. For as much money as this is total, I think the center was close to $70 with tax, maybe a little bit over. To have to do all this garbage is ridiculous. So that's why maybe the next car I fool with is not going to be a Mopar, because the quality of parts is not so much the availability, as Howard was asking about that. You know, the parts are there now for the most part, but they are just, you know, the quality is just terrible. I mean, it's awful. So just keep that in mind when you're going to fix an old car up, whether you're going to do a ground up restoration or you're going to just spruce one up, or replace, you know, repair or replace parts that are you know, need to be, like the fuel system and stuff. Just keep that in mind, that you're not going to get any good made in America parts anymore. It's as cheap as they can make them, because the thing I didn't say earlier is there's not a big demand for these right now. So, you know, they have to recoup their tooling costs and production costs and stuff like that pretty quick to make it worthwhile, I guess. But I like the tank. I mean, the tank fit fine, but it's not the right tank for it, because that's what they sent me. But it's got an extra port on it that my car doesn't have. The clean air cars have this port, I guess, but it's a vent. But I have a vent. This one's supposed to have one vent, this car is, and this has two. Whatever. As long as I get the thing in, it works. I guess I better be happy about it, huh? Alright guys, well, let me go ahead and continue to engineer this thing to get it in here. What a fiasco. Fiasco.